Hello and welcome. This is Darla Ledoux. I'm your host for Activating Magic. And today I want to talk about how to host a retreat off your to-do list once and for all. I will share a little bit about my first retreat. I'm going to break down the 3 things that people are most afraid of that keep host retreat on their to-do list year after year, and solutions for each of those. I'm also going to tie this back to my last solo episode where I shared the story of how I stopped helping people host retreats and share a little bit more about the inside scoop about that and how that might apply to you. So let's dive in, shall we? So first of all, in my first retreat, I had host retreat on my to-do list for almost a decade. I knew that the reason I was getting into the world of coaching is I saw myself gathering groups. I felt the power of group transformation. My life had been changed on retreat. And I knew that if I could bring people together with a type of conversation, it would make a difference. And I knew I wanted that, and I trusted that other people wanted that. But if I'm honest, I was terrified. So after years of daydreaming about hosting retreats, thinking about starting a coaching business, I finally did after my stepdad passed away. And it was kind of like my spark to move into this work. And I started doing coaching, and I had a handful of clients, and they were paying me a very low rate to be their coach. And I was learning, and I wasn't really sure if I had anything of value to offer. So I was pretty nervous getting started, even though at a higher level, I knew this was what I was meant to do. I didn't have a lot of reps, and I was pretty nervous about it. But I knew I wanted to host retreats. And so pretty early on, I decided to put a retreat on the books. Now, I'll break down, all the process of that. But I said, okay, I'm going to do it. It was in Nashville, Tennessee at a DoubleTree Inn because they gave people free breakfast, which seemed important to me at the time. And it was great. And I had a beautiful big hotel room suite all to myself. We could have hosted the whole retreat in the suite. It was so huge. But this was my first retreat. And like many people, I felt like there was a lot to do, a lot to prepare. I had to prove myself. I had to sound smart. I had to look good, all of those things. And so I prepared 182 PowerPoint slides, I kid you not, and a big workbook for this retreat. It was called the Sweet Spot Business Retreat. And I had all of that, even though in my heart, I knew I wanted, the most important thing to me. I had done a lot of training in these 10 years while I was avoiding hosting retreats. I knew the most important thing for me was that they walked out in a different energy than they came in. And so I had some things prepared for that, but I was really afraid that that wasn't enough, that people may not want to go there in terms of the kind of transformation that I wanted to give. And so I created all of this content, slides, workbook, all of that, so I could look like I was giving a lot of value if the stuff I really wanted to do went off the rails and it didn't go well. So long story short, it did go well, and I did use most of those slides. So it was pretty intense. It would not be what I would recommend to someone today. But I walked out of that retreat with coaching contracts that essentially replaced my corporate income for the next 6 months. And I was certain I was going to be pretty broke being a life coach. So it was amazing. Maybe this sounds familiar. Maybe you have had a different experience. Maybe you have had host retreat on your to-do list for years. And I am telling you, I have talked to so many people in this place where they just keep putting it off, and they have lots of logical reasons for why they're putting it off. And when I talk with them, I know it's not logical. there's something underneath, and we're going to break that down today. The other category you might be in is you've hosted retreats, but they haven't made a lot of money. And I've worked with quite a few people like this also, where they decide to do a retreat, they spend 6 months developing it, finding the location. Maybe they even go to a bunch of locations to find the perfect spot. They spend all this time getting people to sign up. And then at the end of the day, they make a couple $1,000s on the retreat and they feel like, oh, yeah, I got paid to do this thing I love. But a couple $1,000s over the course of 6 months is not sustainable in any way. So I've worked with a lot of people in that place too, who have done that, and maybe they stopped doing it because they weren't making any money. So maybe that's you as well. Now, I'm not going deep into the money model in this episode today, but I am going deep into the fear and the reason people don't do this, even though they have the calling. And I had the calling. I avoided it for a long time for a lot of the same reasons. So let's dive in. So first, there are 3 things that people are afraid of when they think about hosting that retreat. 1 is, will people sign up? 2, will people show up? And 3, will people get what they came for? And those are the questions in the back of the mind that keep people from doing it. And there are a lot of decisions around each of these things. Will people sign up? Well, how am I going to have them sign up? What's my marketing strategy? What's the retreat about? What's it called? Where's it located? Will people want to go there? All of those things, right? And underneath that too is this idea, will I lose money? And by the way, there's 2 ways to ensure you don't lose money. And depending on your personality, I would recommend a different thing. But that can totally be dealt with. Like, that's not the real issue. That's the thing we tell ourselves. I don't have the money, but that is not the real issue. Will they show up? There's a lot of decisions around that. Like, how is my team supporting people to actually get in the room? But there's, again, something underneath that as well. And then, will they get what they came for? Well, first of all, do you know what they came for? And we'll dive into that. And second, there's a lot of ways to design a retreat to give people what they really need, what they really came for in their heart. And so there's a lot of decisions around that. You know, what do you lead? Do you bring in guest experts? Do you do experiences? Are there things in their workbook? Do they need an action plan? Are they, how much do you contribute? All of this. These are all decisions that stack up to, do they get what they came for? And so when someone puts host a retreat on their to-do list, they're actually putting like 800 things, 800 different decisions on their to-do list. Seriously. And then they wonder, well, why do I keep not doing it? Well, because there's so many decisions to make, right? It's a freaking long to-do list. Of course you're going to delay it, especially if you don't know what those 800 things are and you're trying to do it alone. So I have a solution for you, of course, but let's dive in to the one thing that makes all the difference. So people think hosting a retreat is something they do, right? They put it on their to-do list, literally. And yet I would like to assert that that's the wrong line of thinking. And when you think it's something to do and there's 800 decisions to make, you're never going to do it. Retreat leader is someone you be. Retreat leader is someone you be. It's an embodiment. And that shift changes everything about those 800 decisions. Everything. Because when we're in the doing and we're ungrounded, maybe we're up here figuring it out, right? Those decisions just become like putting us in the rat race. But when we are embodied in our retreat leader magic, We know who we are. We know what we stand for. And we know, like cellular knowing, bone deep knowing, what will happen for people when they step into that retreat. Everything about those decisions starts to change. You become the expert, and you know who it's right for. You know how to design it. Now, there's a lot to know, and I'll dive into that about how to design it, but it has to emanate from your magic. The actual flow and design and the conversation that will be had at the retreat needs to flow from your magic. So the one shift, right? Stop thinking that hosting a retreat is something you do and you check off your list, and start instead imagining that retreat leader is someone you become, and that it changes everything around your business and your business model and the flow of clients and your level of confidence and certainty that you're drawing in right clients who will get what they changes everything. Now, I want to tie back to my last solo episode I did where I shared I used to be, quote, the retreat lady, like people would call me that, because I was focused on helping people host their powerful, profitable retreats. And, I've always been very much about the being, the energy, the courage to have these truthful conversations. That's always been me. And I'm going to tell you, I kind of fell into this trap of the to-do, right? So when I would start talking about, I help people host retreats, they immediately go to, what's your favorite venue? How do I negotiate a contract? Should I have Airbnb or, a hotel or a resort? And those are all important questions. I know answers to these things, right? But that is not the conversation to be having. And I kind of got tired of it. And so in the last episode, I shared about how I had a group of 16 people come to this retreat. And I felt like at best, they had bought it from a Facebook ad, right? At best, half of them would actually ever do a retreat, ever, right? And not because they weren't smart, not because, they weren't great people, but because becoming the person who facilitates potent transformation was not on their priority list. And I look back now and I think, oh, how would I market differently? This is the basis of this conversation, to really let people know, hey, this is the priority. And it wasn't like I was keeping it a secret, but I was still kind of letting people get away with not being that. And the truth is, if you're not centered and embodied and grounded in your magic, your connection to source, your approach to transformation, and there's, a handful of different approaches, and one is going to be most resonant for you. If you're not embodied in that, and you're in your head and you're wanting to teach stuff and get people to come and look good and prove yourself and all of those things, it's just going to be more challenging. Being retreat leader is a way of life, and you are that whether you're actively hosting a retreat right now or not. It's an embodiment that you carry with you in your sales conversations, in your marketing webinars, in the way you write your newsletter, whatever you're already doing, you start to bring it in. And every single retreat that you host for the rest of your life will be an invitation to transform, an invitation to further align your vibration with the vibration your soul came. Every time. And it's amazing. But we've got to know that that's what it is and not think it's just something to do and get upset when the doing is hard. Okay? So we're going to look at these 3 areas and break that down even further. 1, will they sign up? Will they sign up or will I lose money? So again, there's lots of ways around the money thing. We could talk about that. That's not for this episode. But there are two different money personalities that it's important to know which one you fall in. But here's the thing. Them signing up is about you understanding transformation. So here's what happens. People decide to become a coach. They start selling one-on-one coaching. They're finding it kind of hard to sell. And they think, oh, maybe if I do a retreat, people will want to come to that. And so they create this retreat. They create a beautiful page with all the pictures and the words and all the things. And then they post it on their social media. And then they think people should sign up. And people don't sign up. And now you've spent all this time and maybe money placing a deposit and canceling your retreat on this idea that if I build it, they will come. And if I make this pretty page, people are going to want to sign up. But here's the thing. If you are not selling transformation already, you're not selling the transformation of your retreat. So you may get 5 friends to come because they love you and you undercharged them. And that's not, I mean, that's great. That's great if you're starting out there, right? Practice, get practice, do your thing. No problem, no judgment about that. And the truth is, if you want to fill a retreat with people who want to transform their lives, who are creating something in the world, you need 2 things. One, you need a leadership stance around your retreat. You may not have that the first time. It may take some practice. It takes conversation. But you need a leadership stance around your retreat. Like, this is what will happen here. And that speaks to number 3, where we're afraid we can't deliver. But we've got to, like Babe Ruth pointed to the fence to say, I'm going to hit this home run. We've got to point to an outcome that they really want and take a stand. And so many people don't want to do that, right? They just want people to want to come to the beach and journal and do yoga. And they don't want to take a stand for someone changing their life, because what if they can't deliver? So leadership stance with your retreat. And then 2, you've got to be able to enroll people. You have to be able to have a conversation that helps someone get present to a desire that's greater than their fear of change. And you have to be able to have that conversation over and over and over again. And eventually you'll be able to have that conversation in a group setting, in a webinar, in a 5-day challenge, etc. But if you're not able to have that conversation one-on-one, in other words, if you're not selling your coaching services, it's the same thing with a retreat, right? We think that the destination is going to do all the work, but it won't, because we have to become the person who can have that enrollment conversation. We have to become the person who can talk with another human being about something they may have been avoiding for most of their life, so that we can find out, are they willing to go there and actually transform and actually change their life? If we're not willing, that retreat's not going to fit. Okay? So will they sign up? Number 2, will they show up? By the way, I wanted to say one other thing about the sign up. There are ways around having webinars, and I teach about that. I have a program called Retreats That Shift the Field, and we teach about that. So just know, it doesn't mean that you have to be having these sales conversations over and over for the rest of your life, but in the beginning you do. Absolutely. Okay. Number 2, show up. Will they show up? Now, this is a tiny thing, but a big thing. A lot of people have baggage around people showing up for them. Who am I? Why do they care? Maybe someone didn't show up to your birthday party when you were 6 and you're still worrying about that. I find this to be a rite of passage. People will drop out of your retreat. Sometimes it's an energy thing. Your energy has shifted and they're not actually right anymore to be there. But more often than not, it is a rite of passage of really re-enrolling people to come to the thing they purchased. And I've worked with, retreat leaders for over a decade. This happens for everyone. It is very rare for me at this point that anyone doesn't show up for something that I'm offering or even thinks about not showing up. I know that if they do, I know how to have that conversation to re-enroll them in the possibility. And most people, again, are not being a stand for other people's transformation. And so they just say, okay. And we've got to be someone who takes a stand, because that's how we're creating the energy of the significance of the transformation that will happen at retreat. So will they show up? Yeah, you got to show up. You got to show up to meet them. And this isn't about wanting it more than they do. That's a mistake. We don't want that. We don't want to drag people in, but we want to show up without our ego involved and just say, hey, this is what you said you wanted. Has that changed? Is this thing that's coming up now suddenly as a date conflict more important than the thing you said you wanted that had you registered? So we got to be that person, right? Okay, number 3, will they get what they came for? So first question is, do you know what they came for? And that goes back to that leadership stance. In other words, is your marketing so clear that you know the why behind why people are in the room? Because here's what will happen. If you're doing deep work, which if you're listening to this, that's your goal, right? You want to show up magical, have people leave in a different energy. So if you're doing that kind of work, they need to have a thing that they want so much that they're going to be willing to see a truth that's been hidden from their view for their entire life. Sometimes it's not always the entire life, but often. And so do you know what they came for? Whether you've had a one-on-one conversation with them, you wrote it down, you remember, you've got it in your little folder. So if someone waffles, you can remind them. But ultimately, our goal is that our marketing is so clear, pointing to the destination with a leadership stance, that when people come, they can't possibly forget what they came for. And the entire room is moving in that direction together, like a beautiful orchestra. And they can't not get it, right? They can't not get it. So are you willing to be someone who will do that? Most people just want it to be, fluffy and not promise anything and talk about the journey of I'm going to discover, rather than pointing to this is who we're becoming when we come to this. The second piece about them getting what they came for is my favorite thing, which is having designed your retreat to shift the field. Have you designed your retreat to shift the field? So there's like layers to this, right? There's the structure of the agenda of your retreat. There's what I call the anchor experiences that you've built into your retreat that are strategically designed to have people see the truth that's been hidden from their view, maybe since they were 6 years old. Okay. Strategically designed for that, where they'll have this new awareness that changes the way they show up and interact with life. That's how I define transformation. So you've got that strategic design, and then layered on top of that is your personal magic. It's the way Source lets you know what's really going on in the room or with a person, so that you're bringing that truth, that magical truth, and sprinkling it on top of this whole experience. So those layers design something so that you can shift the field. So first of all, I teach the anatomy of a transformation, and your retreat is the sourced experience where they will release, receive, rise. Release control, receive truth, rise in a new energy. That's what we want it designed for, and that's the flow. And you want to know that you've designed for that. And then you want to know that you can be the person who can deliver it. So again, while there's a lot of decisions to make around these exercises and how you show up and where you have it and all of that, at the core, this magic, you want to know that you've embodied your magic. So it's not something you have to think about in the moment. It's someone you be, you just emanate. And so the foundation, the structure of what you're doing, right? These experiences on top, and then your magic. If you know, because you've practiced it, because you've gotten your own hidden truths out of the way so you can hold space for a group, and you know that you can show up and see what someone's not seeing. Right? You've got this good design, and then they're moving through it, and you're showing up, you're holding the space, and you see what they don't see, and you sprinkle that in. They can't help but to get the outcome. And they can't help but to get the outcome. But most people don't do the work to develop that because they're so busy with the external doing of figuring out from their head all the stuff to do. But when we be the person who brings the magic, it changes everything. Now, all of a sudden, all those 800 decisions, we want to make them. And by the way, 400 of them don't even need to be made. And the other 400 are like, oh yeah, this, because you know yourself as the person that can bring that. And the reason people leave host a retreat on their to-do list for decades is because they don't know how to be that person. They haven't cultivated it to the point where at a very deep level, they know, I will know what to do when something shows up at this retreat, when a client is faced with a tender truth that they've been avoiding for a lifetime, I will know what to do. And I know Source is in the room. I know I don't have to remember everything about what to do because Source is also. And Source is guiding them and me and all the other people, and Source has orchestrated the most beautiful coming together of a group that ever could come together. And we are going to shift. And when you have that knowing and that confidence and that energetic certainty, it draws people to you and it makes them want to sign up, show up, and get what they came for because they're coming. So, just to recap, if you thought host a retreat was something you need to do and you have had it on your to-do list for a long time, consider be retreat leader is actually a better goal. And then the question is, how do I be retreat leader? What do I have to transform? What do I have to understand? Who do I need to become to embody my magic and be the person that shifts the field? And if that question resonates for you, I invite you to come join me. I have a retreat called Embody Your Retreat Leader Magic. It is happening April 16th to 18th. You can find that on my website at sourcedexperience.com/embody, and you'll find the retreat there. And if you are wanting more support, you want to start planning your retreat right away, email support@sourcedexperience.com because I'm filling a pilot program of retreats that shift the field. It's a 3-month container to help you make all these decisions, basically. And it includes the live retreat where you can come and become the person who can deliver the work. I'm Darla Ledoux, host of Activating Magic, and I hope to support you in your retreat vision soon. I'd love to know, what'd you take away from this? And if you know someone who's had host a retreat on their to-do list, please share it because this really could be a game changer for them. I'll see you soon.